The bucket slipped from frozen fingers and struck the wellstones with a sound like a gunshot. The child did not cry. 7 years old, and she had learned what her dying mother already knew. In Willowbrook, they were alone. But she was not alone. Not anymore. From the ridge above, a stranger watched through the falling snow. What he saw would change 3 lives forever. The wind cut through James Blackwood like a blade made of winter itself. 4 years of drifting, and he still could not outrun the dead. His wife's face in morning light, his daughter's laugh echoing through an empty house. The graves he had dug with his own hands while neighbors stood back, afraid to touch those claimed by fever. His horse stumbled beneath him. The gelding had carried him through 3 territories, never faltering, never complaining. Now its legs trembled. Foam gathered at the corners of its mouth, already freezing in the brutal cold. "Easy, boy." The words came out rough, unused. Jim could not remember the last time he had spoken to another living soul. A week, perhaps 2. The horse stumbled again. This time it did not recover. Jim barely freed his boots before the animal went down, sides heaving, breath coming in labored gasps. He knelt in the snow, placed both hands on the horse's neck. The gelding's eyes were already glazing over. Worked too hard, too long, too cold. Like everything else Jim touched. Dying. "I'm sorry." The horse shuddered once and went still. Jim stayed there longer than he should have, snow piling on his shoulders, his hat the dead animal's flank. Then he forced himself to stand. He pulled the Springfield rifle from its scabbard, checked the action. 6 rounds of 45-70 government ammunition. The Bowie knife on his belt, 9 inches of steel with a walnut handle worn smooth by his father's hand before him. In his saddlebag, the surgeon's kit he had carried since Shiloh, scissors, silk sutures, a bottle of carbolic acid wrapped in cloth. He started walking because stopping meant thinking and thinking meant remembering. The storm thickened around him, erasing the world. He almost missed it. A sound beneath the howling wind, thin, high, desperate, human. Jim stopped, turned his head. There it was again, coming from the valley below. He pushed forward, cresting a small rise. What he saw drove the cold from his bones for a single terrible moment. A child, a little girl no more than 7 or 8 years old. She was dragging something through the snow. Someone, a man, limp and bleeding, leaving a red trail behind them that the storm had not yet covered. The girl's arms were wrapped around the man's chest. Her small boots dug into the snow, seeking purchase that was not there. She pulled with everything she had, moved him perhaps an inch, then pulled again. She was not crying, not screaming, just pulling, again and again and again. Something cracked open inside Jim's chest. He moved without thinking, half running, half falling down the slope. The girl did not see him until his shadow fell across her path. She spun around, placing herself between Jim and the wounded man. Her chin came up, her small hands balled into fists no bigger than apples. "Don't you touch him!" Jim stopped 3 paces away, raised both hands slowly, showing empty palms. "I'm not going to hurt him, miss, or you. That's what they all say." Her voice shook, but her stance did not waver. "That's what the men in town said before they did this to Uncle Toby." Jim's eyes dropped to the unconscious man. Older, gray-haired, with a bloody gash across his temple and a dark stain spreading across his shoulder. Bullet wound. His doctor's mind supplied the information automatically. Recent, still bleeding. 44 caliber from the size of the entry wound, fired at close range. "Who shot him?" "Don't matter." The girl's voice hardened. "He's mine to protect now." The defiance hit Jim like a physical blow. His daughter Rosie had been this age when she died. The same fierce bravery in the face of impossible odds. "How far to home?" The girl's eyes narrowed. "Why?" "Because that man is going to die in this snow if we don't get him warm, and you're going to freeze right alongside him." Something flickered across her face. Fear, perhaps, or hope. Sometimes it was hard to tell the difference. "That way." She pointed toward a faint light in the distance, barely visible through the storm. "Our farm." Jim knelt beside the wounded man, placed 2 fingers against his neck. The pulse was there but weak, irregular. The bullet had gone through the shoulder, messy but survivable if they stopped the bleeding and kept infection at bay. The head wound worried him more, could mean swelling, bleeding inside the skull where no knife could reach. I'm going to carry him. You lead the way. Can you do that? The girl studied him for a long moment. Her eyes were old, Jim realized. Too old for her small face, as if she had seen the things no child should see. You're not from town, she said finally. Not a question. No, miss, I'm not. Then I reckon you'll do. She turned and started trudging through the snow, her small form nearly disappearing in the white. Try to keep up, mister. Despite everything, Jim felt his cracked lips twitch. He lifted the wounded man over his shoulders using the fireman's carry he had learned in the war, when there had been too many bodies and not enough stretchers. The man was lighter than he should be. Not eating enough, probably. Times were hard in these mountains. They walked in silence, broken only by the wind and the crunch of snow beneath their feet. The girl spoke without turning around, her voice carrying back to him through the storm. Mama's sick, too. Been sick since Papa died. The doctor in town won't come out no more. Says we can't pay. Jim said nothing, just walked, one foot in front of the other, the way he had been walking for 4 years. I get water from the well every day. For Mama, for Uncle Toby, for the animals. People in town see me, but they don't see me. You know? He knew. God help him, he knew exactly what she meant. What's your name, miss? Lily. She glanced back at him, snowflakes catching in her dark hair. Lily Hartwell. What's yours? James Blackwood. That's a strong name. She faced forward again. You're going to need to be strong, Mr. Jim. My mama's got a shotgun, and she don't trust strangers. Smart woman. She's the smartest and the bravest and the prettiest, even when she's sick. Lily's voice caught slightly. She just needs help is all. We all do. The light ahead grew stronger. A cabin took shape through the snow, small but sturdy, well-maintained despite obvious recent neglect. Smoke curled from the stone chimney. They were perhaps 50 yards away when the front door burst open. A woman appeared, shotgun raised, barrel pointed directly at Jim's chest. Put him down. Her voice cut through the wind like a blade honed on grief and fear and too many months alone. Put him down and step away or I'll drop you where you stand. Eleanor Hartwell had learned to recognize danger before it announced itself. Her Cherokee mother had taught her that, reading the intentions of men before they spoke. It had sharpened when she married Daniel, learning to see threats in shadows, lies and smiles, betrayal and handshakes. Now, looking at the stranger holding Toby's limp body, every instinct screamed warning. He was tall, broad-shouldered, with a face that might have been handsome before grief carved it into hard angles. His eyes were gray, flat, revealing nothing. Dangerous eyes, the eyes of a man who had killed and would kill again. But he lowered Toby gently to the snow and stepped back without argument. His hands came up empty. Mama! Lily ran forward, wrapping small arms around Ellie's waist. Mama, don't shoot him. He helped me bring Uncle Toby home. Ellie's grip on the shotgun did not waver. The double barrels of the 12-gauge stayed locked on the stranger's chest, her finger resting on the front trigger. Who are you? Name's James Blackwood, ma'am. Was passing through when the storm caught me. Heard your daughter calling for help. Passing through to where? Nowhere particular. A drifter, then. Ellie's jaw tightened. Drifters meant trouble. Always had. But Toby was bleeding. Toby was dying, and this stranger had carried him through a blizzard instead of leaving him to freeze. Lily, get inside. But Mama. Now, Lily obeyed reluctantly, casting worried looks back at both men. Ellie waited until the door closed before lowering the shotgun slightly. Not all the way. Never all the way. You said he needed help. Explain. Found your girl trying to drag him through the snow about half a mile east. Man's been shot. Shoulder wound, through and through. Pistol caliber, close range. He needs a doctor. Doctor won't come. Something flickered in those gray eyes. Then I'll do what I can if you'll allow it. You a doctor? Was. Army surgeon during the war. And after. Ellie studied him. His hands were steady despite the cold. His voice was calm, matter of fact. He did not beg, did not wheedle, did not try to charm. Just stood there waiting for her decision, snow gathering on his shoulders like a shroud. You make one wrong move, she said slowly, and I'll put both barrels through your chest. We clear? Crystal, ma'am. She stepped aside, keeping the shotgun ready. Bring him in. The cabin's interior hit Jim like a wave of warmth. A fire crackled in the stone hearth. Simple furniture, lovingly made. Clean despite the obvious strain the household was under. This was a home, he realized. A real home maintained by people who cared. Something tightened in his chest. Put him on the table, Ellie directed. Lily, fetch the whiskey from the cabinet. Clean cloths from the chest. Jim laid Toby down carefully, already cataloging the wounds. The shoulder was bad but manageable. The head wound worried him more. Could mean internal bleeding, swelling in the brain where no knife could reach. I need hot water, he said, and something to sterilize instruments. You got a knife, needle, and thread? Ellie produced them without hesitation. She moved efficiently, no wasted motion, no panic. Jim had seen trained nurses with less composure. You've done this before, my husband taught me. He was a medic. Was, past tense. Jim did not ask. He worked for the next hour, his hands falling into the old rhythm, cleaning the wound with boiled water and carbolic acid, extracting fragments of cloth and dirt, stitching muscle with catgut that would dissolve on its own, closing the skin with 12 neat sutures of black silk thread. Ellie assisted without being asked, anticipating his needs, handing him instruments before he requested them, holding the lantern steady when he needed more light, moving gauze and bandages into position. Lily watched from the corner, clutching her ragged doll, silent but alert. Her eyes tracked every movement, missing nothing. When Jim finally stepped back, Toby's breathing had steadied. Color was returning to his weathered face. He'll live, Jim said, assuming no infection sets in. Ellie exhaled slowly. Her hands were shaking. Jim noticed. First time they had trembled all night. Thank you. The words seemed to cost her something. Your husband taught you well. Something shuddered in her face. He taught me a lot of things. The room fell silent except for the crackle of the fire. Jim began cleaning his instruments, wiping blood from the steel. They did not offer him a bed. Ellie made that clear without saying it directly. He could stay by the fire, she said, until the storm passed. Then he would be on his way. Jim did not argue. He had no standing to argue. He was a stranger in their home, and they had already given him more trust than was wise. He sat by the hearth after everyone else had retired, watching the flames dance, listening to the wind howl outside. His thoughts drifted where they always drifted when he let his guard down. Margaret laughing in their kitchen, flour on her nose from making bread. Rosie running through summer grass with wild flowers tangled in her hair. The last letter he had received, the one that arrived 3 days too late. Come home. Something's wrong. Please come home. But he had been chasing ghosts even then, chasing Nathan Cross across 3 territories, following leads that went nowhere, information that proved false. And while he chased shadows, his family died alone. You're not sleeping. Jim looked up. Lily stood in the doorway of the small alcove where she slept with her mother, wrapped in a blanket too big for her small frame. Neither are you, miss. I don't sleep much. She patted over, settling on the floor near him with the unself-consciousness of childhood. Bad dreams. About what? Lily was quiet for a moment, firelight dancing across her young face. Then, about Papa, about the well, about things that haven't happened yet. Jim studied her carefully. Things that haven't happened yet? Mama says I imagine things. Lily pulled her blanket tighter. Maybe I do, but I saw you coming, Mr. Jim. 3 days ago, I drew a picture of a man carrying Uncle Toby through snow. Mama thought it was just a story. A chill ran down Jim's spine that had nothing to do with the winter outside. What else have you drawn? Lily's old eyes met his. The bad men, the ones who hurt Papa, they're coming back soon. How soon? I don't know, but I feel it. She pressed a small hand to her chest. In here. It gets tight when something bad is close. Jim was a practical man, a man of medicine and evidence. He did not believe in visions or premonitions or things that could not be explained. But looking at this child, at the certainty in her eyes, at the weight she carried that no 7-year-old should have to bear. What happened to your papa, Lily? They said he fell at the well, hit his head on the stones. Her voice dropped to a whisper. But that's not what I saw. In my dreams, someone pushed him. Someone with a mean smile. Did you tell your mama? She doesn't believe me. Lily's chin trembled. Nobody does. But I know what I saw, Mr. Jim. I know what's true. Jim thought about all the things he knew to be true, about the bodies he had buried, the graves he could not visit, the ghosts he could not escape, about a little girl named Rosie who had believed her papa would always come home. "I believe you," he said quietly. Lily's whole body sagged with relief. She leaned against his arm, small and warm and trusting in a way he did not deserve. "I knew you would," she whispered. "I saw that too." They sat together in the firelight, the storm raging outside, while somewhere in the darkness, danger crept closer. "Tell me about your drawings," Jim said after a while. "The ones you don't show your mama." Lily looked up at him, studying his face in the flickering light. Then she stood and moved to a corner of the room where an old trunk sat against the wall. She opened it carefully, quietly, and withdrew a small wooden box carved with simple flowers. "Papa made this for me, for my birthday. Before she cleared her throat. "I keep my secret things in here." She opened the box. Inside were dozens of folded papers, some yellowed with age, others fresh. She spread several across a hay bale near the fire, her small hands trembling slightly. "These are my dreams." Jim felt his breath catch. The drawings were crude, obviously the work of a child, but they were unmistakable in their subjects. A man lying by a well, dark water spreading around him. A figure walking away, coat and hat in sharp silhouette. A horse fallen in snow, legs twisted. Another figure carrying someone toward a cabin through a blizzard. Men with guns approaching a farmhouse. A train billowing smoke. A badge, star-shaped, lying in dirt. And one that made his blood run cold, a grave. 3 headstones, a man kneeling before them, head bowed, his own silhouette perfectly captured despite the simple lines. "When did you draw this?" His voice came out rough as sandpaper. "Last week, before you came." Lily watched him with those knowing eyes. "That's you, isn't it? Those are your people." Jim could not speak, could barely breathe. 4 years of running and a child's drawing had found him, seen him, known him. "I'm sorry, Mr. Jim." Lily's small hand found his again. "I know what it feels like when the people you love go away and don't come back." He should say something, should comfort her, maybe, or ask more questions about her visions. But the words would not come. His throat was too tight, his chest too full of things he had spent 4 years trying to forget. "There's more." Lily shuffled through the papers, pulling out a fresher drawing. "I made this one last night, after you saved Uncle Toby." The image showed the interior of a barn. This barn, Jim realized, though he had not yet seen it. A figure was lifting floorboards near the back wall. Beneath the boards, something gleamed. Papers, perhaps. Or metal. "What is that?" "I don't know. But Papa's there." She pointed to a shadowy figure standing beside the kneeling man. "See? He's showing somebody where to look." Jim stared at the drawing. Daniel Hartwell, dead these 14 months, appearing in his daughter's dreams to reveal hidden secrets. Either the child was touched by something beyond ordinary understanding, or she had seen something real before her father died. Something she did not consciously remember but that lived in her dreams, waiting to surface. Either way, those floorboards in the barn were worth investigating. "Lily, can you keep a secret?" She nodded solemnly. "I keep lots of secrets. Don't tell your mama about this drawing. Not yet. I want to look first. See if there's anything there. Can you do that for me?" "Yes, Mr. Jim." She began gathering her papers, returning them to the carved box. "But you should know something." "What's that?" "The bad men in my drawings, the ones with guns." She met his eyes, and for a moment she looked ancient, timeless, like the land itself. "They're coming soon, real soon. And there's more of them than you think." Before Jim could respond, the barn door banged open. Ellie stood in the doorway, shotgun in hand, fury blazing in her dark eyes. "Lily Hartwell, get in the house, now!" The girl flinched but did not argue. She grabbed her box and ran past her mother, pausing only to squeeze Jim's hand one last time. Ellie waited until her daughter was out of earshot before advancing on Jim. "What were you doing with my child?" "Alone, she was showing me the property." "Like you said, in the barn? Whispering? Looking at papers?" Ellie's voice cracked like a whip. "I may have agreed to let you stay, Mr. Blackwood, but that doesn't give you the right to interrogate my daughter." "I wasn't interrogating her." "Then what would you call it?" "Listening." Jim met her furious gaze steadily. Something it seems she doesn't get much of. Ellie's face went white. How dare you? She sees things, Mrs. Hartwell. Jim stepped closer, lowering his voice. Things she shouldn't be able to see. Things that come true. He paused, then continued. She drew a picture of me arriving with Toby 3 days before it happened. She drew her father's death before he died. And she's seeing more danger coming. Men with guns. Ellie's shotgun wavered slightly. She's a child, a traumatized child with an overactive imagination. She drew my family's graves. The words came out harsher than Jim intended. In Colorado, where I buried my wife and daughter 4 years ago. She's never been to Colorado, never knew me before yesterday. How do you explain that? The color drained from Ellie's face completely. She lowered the shotgun, hands shaking. That's not possible. And yet, they stood in silence, the cold air thick between them. When Ellie spoke again, her voice was barely a whisper. Daniel's mother had it. The sight, she called it, ran in the family on the Cherokee side. Daniel thought. She swallowed hard. He thought Lily might have inherited it. I didn't want to believe him. Didn't want our daughter to carry that burden. It's not a burden if it's used right, if it's believed. Ellie's eyes snapped to his. You believe her? A stranger who's known her less than a day believes her She could not finish. Her shoulders began to shake, and suddenly she was not a fierce frontier woman with a shotgun anymore. She was a mother who had lost her husband, watched her daughter suffer, and denied her child's truth because the alternative was too frightening to accept. Jim did something he had not done in 4 years. He reached out gently, taking the shotgun from her trembling hands, setting it aside. Then he stood there, solid and present, while Eleanor Hartwell broke apart. She did not cry loudly, did not sob or wail, just silent tears streaming down her face as her body shook with suppressed grief. I failed her, Ellie whispered. My baby sees nightmares every night, and I told her they weren't real. I made her think she was broken. You were scared, Jim's voice was gentle. Scared parents make mistakes. That's not an excuse, no. But it's human. Ellie drew a shuddering breath, wiping her face with the back of her hand. When she looked at him again, something had shifted in her expression. The suspicion was still there, but tempered now by something else. Respect, perhaps, or recognition. You've lost children, she said. Not a question. A daughter. Rosie. She was 7, same age as Lily. And your wife? Margaret. The fever took them both while I was... Jim's jaw tightened. Away. Chasing a man who didn't want to be caught. Ellie retrieved her shotgun, but held it loosely now, pointed at the ground. You blame yourself. I'm to blame. No, her voice sharpened. Men like the ones who killed Daniel are to blame. Men who make the choices, do the damage. The rest of us are just trying to survive. She started toward the barn door, then stopped, speaking without turning around. Lily's drawings, the ones she showed you. Was there anything about Daniel? About where he might have hidden his evidence? Jim hesitated only a moment. Trust had to start somewhere, there might be. In the barn. Under the floorboards. Ellie turned slowly, her eyes searching his face. You're sure? Lily's sure, and I'm starting to think that's enough. She absorbed this for a long moment, then nodded once, sharply. Tonight, after Lily's asleep, we look together. She walked out into the snow, leaving Jim alone with the animals and the buste and a box of drawings that showed the future. He stood there in the dim barn, surrounded by the smell of hay and horses, and felt the weight of something shifting. Not just the storm outside, but something deeper. The current of his life, which had been flowing in one direction for 4 years, suddenly changing course. He thought about his wife's grave in Colorado, about his daughter's small headstone, about the promise he had made to them both that he would follow soon. But here was another child, another woman, another chance to be something more than a ghost walking through the world. The question was whether he had the courage to take it, or whether he would run again when morning came, the way he had been running since the day he buried his family and rode away from everything that mattered. Outside, the storm continued its assault on the mountain. Inside, in a small cabin lit by firelight, a little girl who saw too much finally slept peacefully for the first time in months. And between them, a man who had given up on living found himself, against all reason, beginning to hope again. The night deepened, the wind howled, And somewhere in the darkness, riding toward them through the aftermath of the storm, danger crept closer with every passing hour. Morning came gray and cold. The storm had passed, leaving behind a world transformed by white. Jim stood on the cabin's small porch, assessing his situation with the practiced eye of a man who had survived on poor decisions and good luck for too long. No horse, limited supplies. Nearest town at least a day's walk through waist-deep snow. And behind him, a wounded man, a sick woman, and a child who saw things she should not be able to see. The smart thing would be to leave, find his way to Willowbrook, get another horse, keep moving. Whatever trouble this family was tangled in, it was not his concern. He had his own dead to mourn, his own failures to carry. But the memory of Lily's small hand in his, the trust in her ancient eyes, made leaving feel like another kind of dying. The door opened behind him. Ellie emerged, shotgun absent for the first time since he had arrived. She looked exhausted, dark circles under her eyes, shoulders carrying weight no woman should bear alone. But her spine was straight, her chin lifted. Toby's awake. Asking for you? Me. Says he needs to talk. Says it's important. Inside, Toby had managed to prop himself against pillows. His color was better, but pain lined every crease of his weathered face. When Jim approached, the old man's eyes sharpened with recognition. Close the door. It was not a request. Jim glanced at Ellie. She nodded once, then sent Lily outside to check on the animals. When the door shut, Toby fixed Jim with a penetrating stare. I know who you are, Blackwood. Jim went very still. Took me a while to place it. Fever muddles the brain. Toby's eyes remained sharp despite his weakness. You're the marshal who hunted Nathan Cross, the one who almost caught him before you disappeared 5 years back. The name hit Jim like a fist to the gut. Nathan Cross, the outlaw who had fed him false information, drawn him away from home on a wild chase while his family died alone. The man Jim had sworn to kill, then spent 4 years running from instead. That man's dead, Jim said flatly. So is the marshal who hunted him. Dead men don't bleed. Toby nodded toward Jim's hands, still stained with his blood from the surgery. Dead men don't save strangers in snowstorms. What do you want? Toby glanced at Ellie, then back to Jim. Something heavy passed between them. The weight of secrets too long carried. Daniel Hartwell, Ellie's husband, Lily's father. He was a treasury agent investigating Cross's money laundering operation. Toby paused, letting that sink in. He got too close. Found connections nobody was supposed to find. And then he had an accident at the well. Ellie made a small sound, her hand pressed against her mouth. You knew, she breathed. All this time you knew it wasn't an accident, and you didn't tell me. I was trying to protect you, Clara girl. You and Lily. Daniel made me promise. Daniel is dead. Ellie's voice cracked. They murdered him, and you let me believe it was an accident, because the truth would have gotten you killed too. The room fell silent except for the crackle of the fire. Jim processed the information rapidly, his old instincts awakening after 4 years of dormancy. Treasury agent, Nathan Cross, money laundering, murder disguised as accident. The pattern was familiar. Too familiar. Who's behind it locally? Toby's jaw tightened. Man named Victor Ashford. Owns the bank in Willowbrook, half the businesses, most of the law. He's been partnered with Cross for years, cleaning dirty money through legitimate channels. And he wants this land, more than wants, needs. Toby's voice hardened. The water rights on this property control the whole valley. He's planning to dam the river, force out the small ranchers, buy up everything cheap. Daniel was gathering evidence to bring them both down. Died before he could finish. Ellie had sunk into a chair, face pale, hands gripping the armrests. The men who shot you, she said slowly. They were Ashfords. Found me on the North Road. Knew I was bringing supplies, maybe information. They wanted to know what Daniel told me, where he hid his evidence. Toby managed a grim smile. Didn't tell them nothing. But they'll be back, and next time they'll come for you. Jim looked at Ellie, at her proud, devastated face, at her trembling hands trying so hard to be steady. Then he looked at the door, thinking of Lily outside, a child with visions she could not explain, whose father had been murdered for seeking justice. He should leave. This was not his fight. These were not his people. But Rosie had been 7 when she died. The same age as Lily, the same fierce bravery, and Jim was so tired of running. The evidence Daniel gathered, he said slowly. Do you know where it is? Toby shook his head. He was careful. Told me it was hidden somewhere on the property. Said if anything happened to him, the land itself would tell the truth. Never explained what that meant. Ellie stood abruptly, moving to the window. Her voice was barely audible. Lily, her drawings. She's been dreaming about Daniel since he died, drawing pictures of things. She pressed her forehead against the cold glass. I thought she was traumatized, inventing stories. But what if she actually saw something? What if she knows where Daniel hid the evidence? Clara, Toby's voice was gentle. The child's been through enough. The child's going to be murdered if Ashford gets what he wants. Ellie turned, eyes blazing now. I won't lose her too. I won't lose anyone else to that monster. She crossed to Jim, stopping directly in front of him. You were a marshal. You hunted men like Cross, like Ashford. You know how they think, how they operate. That was a long time ago. I don't care. Ellie's voice shook with intensity. My husband is dead. This man, she gestured at Toby, nearly died bringing us supplies. My daughter sees nightmares every time she closes her eyes, and no one in that godforsaken town will lift a finger to help because Ashford owns them all. She drew a breath, steadying herself. Stay. Help me find Daniel's evidence. Help me destroy the people who killed him. And in return, I'll give you whatever you need. Food, shelter, money when this is over. Jim looked into her storm-dark eyes and saw something he recognized. The same desperate determination he had felt when he buried his family. The same refusal to surrender even when surrender made sense. You don't know me, he said quietly. Don't know what I've done. What I failed to do. Oh, no, but my daughter trusts you. Ellie's voice cracked slightly. And Lily doesn't trust anyone anymore. Hasn't since her father died. Outside through the window, Jim could see the child returning from the barn. She moved carefully through the snow, a bucket of feed in her small hands, golden morning light catching the dark waves of her hair. She looked up suddenly, as if sensing his gaze, and smiled. It hit him like a bullet, like a memory, like a promise. I'll stay, he heard himself say, until this is finished, until you're safe. Ellie exhaled slowly, some of the tension draining from her shoulders. Thank you. Toby watched them both with knowing eyes. You're making a dangerous choice, Blackwood. Ashford has men, money, the law on his side. What do we have? Jim thought about the badge he had turned in 5 years ago. The oath he had broken. The man he used to be before grief hollowed him out. We have the truth, he said, and we have each other. The words surprised him. When had he started including himself in their number? Lily burst through the door, cheeks pink from cold, eyes bright. Mama, the storm cleared. Can I show Mr. Jim the property? Can I show him Papa's special places? Ellie looked at Jim. Something passed between them. Understanding. Alliance, the first fragile threads of trust. Yes, sweetheart, show him everything. Lily grabbed Jim's hand without hesitation, tugging him toward the door. Come on, Mr. Jim. I want to show you where the water sings. Papa said the land keeps secrets there. Papa said if you listen close enough, the stones remember everything. Where the water sings, the stones remember. Jim let the child lead him out into the blinding white morning, her small hand warm in his, her chatter filling the silence he had carried for 4 long years. Behind them, Ellie watched from the doorway. Her expression was unreadable, but her hand no longer reached for the shotgun. It was a beginning, and somewhere in the frozen distance, riding toward them, through the aftermath of the storm, danger crept closer with every passing hour. Lily's hand tightened around Jim's fingers as she led him past the barn, her boots crunching through fresh snow. Papa used to bring me here every morning, she said, before the bad thing happened. He said the land talks if you know how to listen. Jim followed in silence, his eyes scanning the property with tactical awareness he could not shut off even after 4 years. The farm was larger than he had first realized. Rolling pastures now buried under white, a frozen creek cutting through the eastern edge. Beyond that, dense pine forest climbing toward distant mountains. There, Lily pointed toward a stone structure near the creek. That's the well where Papa... She did not finish, did not need to. Jim studied the well from a distance. Simple construction, solid stonework. The kind of well a man could maintain for decades without trouble. The kind of well a man would not accidentally fall into. You don't have to go closer, he said quietly. Not if you don't want to. Lily shook her head, her jaw set with determination that reminded him painfully of her mother. I go there every day for Mama. She can't carry the buckets no more. Not since she got sick. Her chin lifted. I'm not afraid of stones and water, Mr. Jim. I'm afraid of the people who hurt Papa. 7 years old and already she understood that the real monsters wore human faces. They walked together toward the well. As they approached, Lily's grip on his hand tightened further. This is where I was, she whispered. When you found me with Uncle Toby, I was coming back from getting water. Heard the shot, found him bleeding in the snow. You were brave. I was scared. She looked up at him with those ancient eyes. Being brave and being scared is the same thing, isn't it? Papa told me that once. Your papa was a wise man. They reached the well. Jim ran his hand along the cold stones, examining the structure with professional detachment. No obvious signs of damage. No loose stones that could cause a stumble. No ice buildup that might explain a fatal fall. Daniel Hartwell had not fallen. He had been pushed, or struck, or both. Lily, do you remember what you dreamed about? The night before your papa died? The girl's face went pale. Mama doesn't like when I talk about that. Your mama's not here right now. It's just us. Lily was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice was barely audible. I saw a man standing right where you're standing. He had a nice coat, nice boots, but his smile was wrong, like a snake pretending to be friendly. She shuddered. Papa was on the ground, not moving, and the man just looked at him, then walked away. Did you see his face? Not clear, just the smile and his hands. Lily's eyes went distant, remembering. He had soft hands, clean, not working hands like Papa's or Uncle Toby's. Soft hands, clean. The hands of a banker, perhaps, or a man who paid others to do his dirty work. Has your mama ever taken you to town? To Willowbrook? Sometimes. Before Papa died. Not after. Mama says folks there aren't kind to us no more. Why not? Lily's jaw tightened in an expression that reminded Jim painfully of Ellie. Because of what Mama is. What I am. We got Cherokee blood. Some folks don't like that. Jim felt something cold settle in his stomach. He had seen that particular hatred before, during the war and after, seen what it could drive men to do. The man with the nice coat, he said carefully, the one in your dream. Have you ever seen him in town? Lily nodded slowly. He owns the bank. Mr. Ashford. He came to our farm once after Papa died, brought papers for Mama to sign, said he wanted to help us buy our land so we wouldn't have to worry no more. What did your mama say? A ghost of a smile crossed Lily's face. She told him to get off our property before she put a hole in his fancy suit. He didn't look so friendly after that. Jim almost smiled himself. Eleanor Hartwell was something else. Mr. Jim, Lily tugged his sleeve. Can I show you something? Something secret? What kind of secret? My drawings, the ones Mama doesn't know about. I hid them in the barn, in the place Papa showed me. His instincts sharpened. Show me. They made their way to the barn, Lily glancing back toward the cabin to make sure her mother was not watching. Inside, the building was cold but sheltered from the wind. 2 horses shifted in their stalls. A milk cow lowed softly. Chickens clucked from their roost. Lily led him to a corner where old tools hung on wooden pegs. She reached behind a rusted plow blade and withdrew a small wooden box, its surface carved with simple flowers. Papa made this for me, she said, cradling it like treasure. For my birthday, before he... She cleared her throat, not finishing. I keep my secret things in here. She opened the box. Inside were more drawings, dozens of them, some yellowed with age, others fresh. Lily spread them across a hay bale, her small hands trembling slightly. Jim felt his breath catch again. More prophetic images. Daniel at the well, the dark figure walking away, men with guns approaching the farmhouse, and others he had not seen before. A woman coughing blood into a handkerchief. Ellie, he realized with a sinking feeling. The sickness Lily had mentioned was consumption. Tuberculosis. He had seen enough cases during the war to recognize the signs. A train station, people boarding, a courtroom, a man in chains. And one drawing that made his hands shake. 3 graves on a hillside, a man planting wildflowers. The same 3 graves from the other drawing, but this time the kneeling figure was not mourning. He was tending them, caring for them, moving forward while still remembering. "When did you draw this?" His voice came out hoarse. "2 nights ago, after you came." Lily's eyes searched his face. "You're going to go back there someday, to where they sleep. But you won't be alone no more." Jim could not speak. 4 years of running, and this child saw not just his past, but a possible future. One where he was not consumed by grief, but transformed by it. But it was the next drawing that changed everything. Fresh sketch, the ink barely dry. The barn interior, a figure lifting floorboards, something gleaming beneath, and Daniel's shadow, transparent but unmistakable, pointing the way. "Where exactly?" Jim asked, his voice urgent now. Lily walked to the back corner, near where the feed was stored. "Here, Papa used to stand here sometimes, just looking at the floor, like he was remembering something important." Jim knelt, running his hands along the wooden planks. They looked solid, well-fitted, but when he pressed on one particular board, it shifted slightly. He pulled his knife, using the tip to pry at the edge. The board lifted free. Beneath it, wrapped in oilcloth to protect against moisture, was a leather satchel. Jim's heart hammered as he lifted it out. Inside were papers, dozens of them, ledgers showing financial transactions, photographs of Ashford meeting with men Jim recognized from wanted posters, and a detailed journal in Daniel Hartwell's careful handwriting, documenting everything he had uncovered. Names, dates, amounts, a complete map of Nathan Cross's money laundering operation, with Ashford at the center of the local network. "This is enough to hang them," Jim breathed. Ashford, Cross, everyone connected. The barn door banged open with a sound like a gunshot. Ellie stood in the doorway, fury and fear warring in her dark eyes. "What are you doing?" Her voice was low, dangerous. "With my daughter." "In here, alone." But her eyes had already found the satchel in Jim's hands. The papers spread across the hay, and her expression shifted from anger to something else. Understanding, horror, hope. "Is that your husband's evidence? Everything he died to protect?" Ellie's legs seemed to give out. She sank against the doorframe, one hand pressed to her mouth. "Dear God, he really did it. He found everything." The sound of hoofbeats cut through the morning air, distant but approaching fast. Multiple riders. Jim was moving before conscious thought. "Get in the house, now, both of you." But Ellie was already running, grabbing Lily's hand, the satchel clutched to her chest. Jim followed, his hand on the revolver at his hip, counting horses by sound alone. 4 riders, maybe 5. They reached the porch just as the horsemen crested the ridge. Jim positioned himself between the door and the approaching strangers, standing in clear view. The lead rider stopped his horse 10 feet away. Even in daylight, his expensive coat and polished boots were visible. Soft hands held the reins. A smile played on thin lips that did not reach his cold eyes. "Good morning," the man said pleasantly. "I don't believe we've met. I'm Victor Ashford." Jim's hand rested on his revolver, but he did not draw. 4 against 1 were bad odds, and Ellie and Lily were inside, vulnerable to crossfire. "Mr. Ashford." Peculiar time for a social call. Ashford's smile widened, but his eyes stayed cold as winter stone. "I heard there was a stranger staying with the widow Hartwell. Thought I'd introduce myself. Welcome you to our little community. Appreciate the hospitality, but Mrs. Hartwell and her daughter are inside. Perhaps you could come back during reasonable hours. I'm sure she wouldn't mind." Ashford moved to dismount. Jim stepped forward, blocking the porch stairs. "I'm sure she would." The air between them crackled with unspoken threat. Ashford's 3 companions shifted in their saddles, hands moving toward weapons visible under their coats. "You're protective of a woman you barely know," Ashford observed. "Admirable. Or foolish. Time will tell which." "Time tells everything eventually." "Indeed it does." Ashford settled back in his saddle, studying Jim with renewed interest. "You're not a drifter, are you? I've seen drifters. They don't stand like you do, don't carry themselves like men accustomed to authority." "I'm whatever I need to be. A dangerous answer, Mr. Blackwood, James Blackwood. Something flickered in Ashford's eyes. Recognition or concern, gone too quickly to identify. Blackwood, he repeated slowly. Can't say the name rings any bells. But then I meet so many people in my line of work. Banking must be fascinating. It has its moments. Ashford gathered his reins, preparing to leave. Do give my regards to Mrs. Hartwell. Reminder that my offer still stands. This property, isolated as it is, vulnerable as she is, accidents happen in winter. Would be a shame if something unfortunate occurred. Is that a threat? Merely an observation. Ashford's smile never wavered. Good day, Mr. Blackwood. I suspect we'll be seeing each other again soon. He wheeled his horse and rode into the morning light, his men following. Jim watched until they disappeared over the ridge before finally releasing his grip on the revolver. The cabin door opened behind him. He knows, Ellie's voice was tight with fear. He knows something's changed. He suspects. There's a difference, not much of one. Ellie stepped onto the porch, arms wrapped around herself against the cold that had nothing to do with winter. We need to leave. Tonight. In the dark. With Toby wounded and Lily half asleep? Jim turned to face her. Ashford's men will be watching the roads. We'd never make it a mile. Then what do you suggest? We wait until dawn. Travel light. Move fast. Jim's mind was already working through options, calculating distances and risks. Head for the mountain pass instead of the main road. Harder terrain, but less likely to be watched. And if they catch us, then we fight. Ellie stared at him, her dark eyes searching his face for something she could trust. You make it sound simple. Nothing about this is simple, but staying here means dying slow. Running means we at least have a chance. She was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke again, her voice was barely a whisper. Daniel used to say the same thing, about chances, about fighting. Her eyes glistened in the morning light. He died anyway. Daniel died protecting his family, protecting the truth. Jim moved closer, his voice gentle but firm. His death doesn't have to be meaningless, Ellie. The evidence we found can destroy Ashford. Bring down Cross. Give Lily a future where she doesn't have to be afraid. And if we fail, then we fail together. But at least we tried. Ellie closed her eyes, drawing a shuddering breath. When she opened them again, the fear was still there, but something else had joined it. Determination. Resolve. The fierce protectiveness of a mother who would burn the world down to keep her child safe. Dawn, then, she said. I'll start packing. She disappeared inside, leaving Jim alone on the porch. He watched the empty ridge where Ashford had vanished, knowing the banker would not wait long. Men like that never did. Inside the cabin, he heard Ellie moving quietly, gathering supplies. Lily's voice asking questions in that too-old way of hers. Toby coughing in his sleep, the wet rattle of healing lungs. A family. Not his family. But perhaps that did not matter anymore. Perhaps family was not just blood and history, but choice and commitment. Perhaps redemption came not from outrunning the past, but from standing still long enough to build something new from its ruins. Jim touched the carved grip of his revolver, feeling the familiar weight. He had worn a badge once, sworn an oath to protect the innocent and bring justice to the lawless. He had failed that oath in the worst way possible. But maybe, just maybe, he could succeed this time. The sun climbed higher, burning away the morning mist. In a few hours, darkness would fall again. And when it did, they would run. Not away from danger, but toward justice, toward truth, toward a future none of them could guarantee, but all of them desperately needed. Behind him, Lily appeared in the doorway, her small face solemn. Mr. Jim? Yes, miss? Are you scared? Jim thought about lying, about being the strong man who feared nothing. But this child deserved truth, not comfortable fiction. Yes, he said simply. I'm scared. Lily nodded as if this was the answer she expected. Me too, but Papa used to say being scared just means you got something worth protecting. Your Papa was right. She slipped her small hand into his, and they stood together on the porch, watching the sun climb toward noon, knowing that darkness was coming, and with it a reckoning that would change all their lives forever. Night fell hard and fast. Ellie packed in darkness, moving between rooms like a ghost, gathering essentials without waking Lily or disturbing Toby. Jim stood watch on the porch, rifle across his knees, counting the minutes until they could move. Around 3 in the morning, a small voice broke the silence. Mr. Jim, he turned. Lily stood beside him, her ragged doll clutched to her chest, her face pale in the starlight. Bad dream? She shook her head slowly. Not a dream, a warning. Jim set the rifle aside, giving her his full attention. What kind of warning? The shadow man, the one I told you about. Lily's voice trembled. He's here, in Willowbrook. Came last night. Who is he, Lily? Do you know his name? No, but he's worse than Mr. Ashford. Much worse. Her small hand found his. He's been watching you, Mr. Jim, for a long time, even before you came here. The words sent ice through Jim's veins. Watching me? In my dreams, I see him watching you. At those graves in Colorado. He stands behind the trees where you can't see him. But he's always there. Lily's grip tightened. He knows you, and he's coming for you. Nathan Cross, the name surfaced in Jim's mind like a corpse rising from dark water. Everyone assumed he was dead, vanished 5 years ago, when Jim abandoned his badge. But what if Cross had simply gone underground, working through proxies like Ashford, waiting for the right moment to surface? This shadow man, Jim said carefully. Have you seen him do anything in your dreams? Lily nodded slowly. He talks to Mr. Ashford sometimes, tells him what to do. Mr. Ashford is scared of him. Her eyes went distant. Everyone's scared of him. What does he look like? Ordinary, like nobody special. That's what makes him scary. Lily's voice dropped to a whisper. Papa's journal talks about him. The papers Mama found. There's a name in there, a name that doesn't match the face. Jim's heart hammered. What name? I don't remember exactly. But it starts with E, like Ezra, but different. Elijah, the alias Cross had been using. Elijah Morrison, a respectable businessman on paper, operating in plain sight while building an empire of corruption and murder. Thank you, Lily. You did good telling me this. Are we leaving? I heard Mama packing. At dawn, going somewhere safe. Lily managed a small smile. I saw it. In my dream. We're on a train going fast, you and Mama and Uncle Toby and me. We're together, her smile faltered. There's parts I can't see clear, foggy parts, but we're alive. That's what matters. That's what matters, Jim agreed. Lily surprised him by crawling into his lap, curling against his chest like she had known him her whole life. Within minutes, she was asleep, her breathing deep and even. Jim sat motionless, afraid to disturb her, feeling her small heartbeat against his ribs. 4 years since he had held a child like this. 4 years since Rosie had fallen asleep in his arms, trusting him to keep the monsters away. He had failed Rosie, failed Margaret, failed everyone who had ever depended on him. But maybe this time could be different. Dawn came with that particular gray light that promised either hope or disaster. The wagon was loaded, supplies hidden under blankets. Daniel's evidence secured in the satchel Ellie wore strapped across her body like armor. Toby protested leaving, but he was too weak to argue effectively. Jim and Ellie helped him into the wagon bed, propping him against sacks of grain, covering him with quilts. This is a mistake, the old man muttered. Should stand and fight. We are fighting, Jim replied, just not here. Lily climbed onto the wagon seat, unusually quiet. Her eyes scanned the horizon with an intensity that made Jim's skin prickle. They're not watching the North Road, she said suddenly. Not yet, but they will be soon. We need to go now. Neither Jim nor Ellie questioned her certainty. The wagon lurched into motion, horses straining against the frozen ground. Jim rode ahead on one of the farm horses, scouting while Ellie managed the reins. They traveled for 2 hours without incident. The mountain pass Ellie had suggested was treacherous, the trail narrow and slippery with ice. More than once, Jim had to dismount and lead his horse on foot, testing the ground before letting the wagon follow. But they were making progress. The ridge ahead marked the boundary of the valley. Once they crossed it, they would be out of Ashford's immediate territory. 4 days to Denver. 4 days to reach Judge Hollister and federal marshals who could not be bought. How much farther? Ellie called. Another mile to the ridge. Then it's downhill toward. A gunshot cracked through the morning air. Jim felt the bullet whistle past his ear, half a heartbeat, before the sound registered. He threw himself from the saddle, hitting snow hard, rolling toward a cluster of rocks. Get down, he shouted. Ellie, get down! More shots. Ellie yanked Lily off the wagon seat, sheltering her behind the wheels. In the wagon bed, Toby struggled to rise despite his useless arm, cursing his weakness. Jim counted muzzle flashes. 3 shooters, maybe 4, positioned on the ridge above them. Professional positioning, not random bandits. Ashford's men. Blackwood, a voice echoed down from the rocks, cultured and amused. We know you have the papers. Hand them over and the woman and child go free. Ellie's eyes met Jim's across the snow. Her hand pressed against the satchel at her side, protective and defiant. Don't even think about it, Jim growled. If it saves Lily, oh, it won't. Jim's voice was flat with certainty. You hand over those papers, we're all dead anyway. Ashford can't afford witnesses. Another shot kicked up snow near Ellie's position. Lily whimpered but did not scream, pressing herself against her mother's side. Last chance, Blackwood. We're not patient men. Jim checked his revolver. 6 shots, 3, maybe 4 targets. Not great odds. But he had survived worse during the war. Barely. Stay down, he told Ellie. No matter what happens, stay down and keep Lily quiet. What are you going to do? Even the odds. Before she could protest, Jim was moving. He scrambled along the rocks, keeping low, using terrain for cover. The shooters had the high ground, but they had made a mistake. They were bunched too close together, watching the wagon instead of their flanks. Jim circled wide, climbing through a narrow gully that brought him above and behind their position. His boots found purchase on frozen stone. His breath came steady, controlled. 4 years of running and his body still remembered how to hunt. He found the first shooter crouched behind a boulder, rifle trained on the wagon below. The man never heard Jim approach. One swift blow to the back of the head with the revolver butt, and he crumpled without a sound. 2 more shots from below. The remaining shooters were getting impatient, wasting ammunition. Jim moved to the second position. This one was more alert, spinning at the last moment, but not fast enough. Jim's fist connected with his jaw, followed by a knee to the gut. The man went down gasping. That left 2. Jenkins! Martinez! One of the remaining shooters had noticed the silence. What's going on over there? Jim stepped into view, revolver raised. Drop your weapons, now. The man's eyes widened. His partner, 20 feet away, made the mistake of reaching for his pistol. Jim fired twice. The first shot took the pistol from the man's hand. The second drove into his shoulder, spinning him around. I said, drop it. The first shooter let his rifle fall, hands rising slowly. You're making a mistake, Blackwood. Mr. Ashford doesn't forget, doesn't forgive. Neither do I. Jim collected their weapons, then sent both men stumbling down the opposite slope with a warning that rang with deadly promise. Tell Ashford we're coming for him. Tell him everything Daniel Hartwell gathered is heading straight to the federal marshals in Denver. And tell him, Jim's voice dropped low, dangerous. Tell him James Blackwood remembers his wife and daughter every single day. The men ran, disappearing into the timber. Jim returned to the wagon to find Ellie and Lily huddled together, Toby sitting up with a pistol he had found somewhere, his face gray with pain and determination. Everyone all right? Ellie nodded shakily. You? Fine, Jim swung onto his horse. We need to move. Those men will report back. Ashford will send more. How many more can there be? As many as his money can buy. Let's not wait to find out. They crossed the ridge as the sun reached its peak. The descent was easier, the trail widening as they left the mountain pass behind. By late afternoon, they had reached a trading post at the junction of 2 roads. Jim left the others hidden in a copse of trees while he approached alone. The trading post was small, a single building with a stable attached. Smoke rose from the chimney. A weathered sign proclaimed Harper's Rest in faded letters. Inside, a grizzled man looked up from behind a counter cluttered with goods. Help you, stranger? Need fresh horses, supplies for a 4-day journey. Willing to pay fair. The man's eyes narrowed, taking in Jim's trail-worn appearance, the revolver at his hip, the weariness in his stance. 4 days. Headed to Denver? Something like that. A lot of folks headed to Denver lately, some of them in a powerful hurry. The trader leaned forward, some of them asking questions about travelers. Families traveling with children. Jim's hand moved imperceptibly toward his weapon. What kind of questions? The paying kind. The trader smiled, revealing gaps where teeth should be, but I haven't answered them yet. Man's got to have principles, don't it? Hey, Danny. Depends on the man. True enough. The trader stood, moving toward the back of his establishment. I got horses, supplies too, but it's going to cost you more than fair. Danger tax, you might call it. How much more? Double. And a promise. What kind of promise? There's a woman and child with you, isn't there? And an old man, wounded. Jim said nothing, but his silence was answer enough. Thought so. Word travels fast in these parts, even in winter. The trader's voice dropped. I knew Daniel Hartwell. Good man. Helped me out of a tight spot once. Asked nothing in return. If that woman out there is his widow and that child is his daughter, they are. The trader nodded slowly. Then here's my promise. You get them to Denver safe. You tell the marshals everything. You burn Ashford and his whole rotten operation to the ground. That's the plan. Then we got a deal. The trader extended his hand. Name's Jacob Harper. And for what it's worth, I hope you make it. They shook. Jim felt something shift in his chest. A stranger choosing sides. A small act of decency in a world that had shown him precious little of it lately. Maybe there was hope yet. An hour later, they were back on the trail with fresh horses and enough supplies to reach Denver. The sun was setting, painting the snow gold and red. Ellie drove the wagon now, her jaw set with determination, while Jim scouted ahead. Lily sat beside her mother, unnaturally still, her eyes fixed on something only she could see. Mama. The girl's voice was barely a whisper. The shadow man knows we're coming. He's not in Willowbrook anymore. Ellie's hands tightened on the reins. Where is he? Ahead of us, waiting. Lily's small body trembled. He knows where we're going. He's always known. Jim heard the exchange, slowing his horse until he rode alongside the wagon. Lily, can you see anything else about him? Where exactly he's waiting? The girl closed her eyes, her face contorting with effort. A building. Big, with lots of people. Official. Her eyes snapped open, blood trickling from her nose. The marshal's office. He's inside the marshal's office in Denver. Jim felt the blood drain from his face. If Cross or whoever this shadow man was had infiltrated the federal marshals, they were walking straight into a trap. Everything they had risked, everything Daniel had died for would be worthless. We can't go to Denver. Ellie's voice was hollow with defeat. We have to, Jim said, but not to the marshal's office, not directly. Then where? Daniel's journal mentioned a judge, someone he trusted, a man named Hollister. Not in Denver, in Cheyenne. Cheyenne's another week's journey, Ellie protested. We don't have supplies. The horses won't make it. Toby won't make it. Then we split up. The words hung in the cold air like a death sentence. No, Ellie's voice cracked. No, we stay together. You promised. I promised to get you and Lily to safety. That's still the plan. Jim moved his horse closer. Listen to me. You take Lily and Toby to Denver. Find a hotel, lay low. Don't contact anyone official. I'll ride to Cheyenne alone, faster without the wagon. Deliver the evidence to Judge Hollister. And if they catch you, they won't. You can't know that. Ellie? Jim reached across, his hand covering hers on the reins. I've been running for 4 years. Running from ghosts, running from guilt, running from everything that mattered. His grip tightened. I'm done running. This is what I'm supposed to do. What I was meant for. Tears spilled down Ellie's cheeks. And what about us? What about Lily? She needs her mother. She needs to be safe. She needs a future where men like Ashford can't touch her. Jim's voice roughened. I can give her that. Let me give her that. For a long moment, Ellie said nothing. Then she pulled her hand free and struck him across the face. The blow was not hard, but Jim felt it to his bones. That's for thinking you get to make this choice alone, Ellie said, her voice shaking with fury. And this? She grabbed his coat, pulled him toward her, and kissed him. It was brief and fierce and desperate, tasting of tears and cold air, and something that might have been the beginning of love. When she released him, her eyes were blazing. That's for coming back. Because you will come back, James Blackwood. You will come back to us, or I swear I will find you in whatever afterlife exists and make your eternity miserable. Despite everything, Jim felt himself smile. Yes, ma'am, Mama. Lily's voice cut through the moment. Someone's coming. They turned. A lone rider was approaching from the north, moving fast, a dark shape against the white landscape. Jim's hand found his revolver. Ellie grabbed the rifle from the wagon bed. The rider came closer, close enough to see details. A woman, Jim realized, riding like she had been born in the saddle, her dark hair streaming behind her. She pulled up 20 feet away, hands raised to show she meant no harm. "Looking for James Blackwood," she called. "Jacob Harper sent me. Said you might need help getting to Cheyenne." "Who are you?" The woman lowered her hands, a grim smile crossing her face. "Name's Catherine Morgan. Friends call me Kate. I write for the Cheyenne Tribune. And I've been investigating Victor Ashford for 2 years." Ellie's grip on the rifle did not waver. "Why should we trust you?" "Because I have documents proving the federal marshal in Denver is on Ashford's payroll. Because I know a safe route to Cheyenne that bypasses all the watched roads." Kate's eyes found Jim's. "And because Nathan Cross killed my brother 3 years ago, and I want to see that monster hang." Nathan Cross. The name hit Jim like a physical blow. "Cross is alive?" "Very much so. Going by a different name now. Elijah Morrison. Respectable businessman on paper. But yes, alive and pulling strings from the shadows." Kate's expression hardened. "You want to take him down? I'm your best chance." Jim looked at Ellie, at Lily, at the long road stretching before them. Then he made his decision. "Tell us everything." Kate Morgan rode beside them as the sun sank toward the horizon, her voice low and urgent as she laid out everything she knew. "Cross has been operating as Elijah Morrison for 3 years now. Respectable businessman on paper. Silent partner in half the banks between here and California." Her jaw tightened. "Nobody suspects because nobody's looking. The wanted posters all say presumed dead." "How did you find out?" Jim asked. "My brother Thomas was a Pinkerton agent. Got too close to Cross's operation in Colorado." Kate's hands clenched on her reins. "They found his body in a ravine. Said he fell from his horse." Ellie drew a sharp breath. "That's what they said about Daniel. It's Cross's signature. Makes it look like an accident. Keeps the law from asking questions." Kate turned to Jim. "But Thomas left notes. Hidden like your husband did. Took me months to piece together what he found." "And what did he find?" "That Cross isn't just a criminal. He's building an empire. Land, water rights, railroads. Everything the West needs to grow, he wants to control." Kate's voice dropped. "Ashford is just one piece. There are others like him in every territory, all answering to Cross." Lily stirred on the wagon seat, her small voice cutting through the cold air. "The spider in the web. That's what I see in my dreams. He sits in the middle and pulls the strings." Kate looked at the child sharply. "What did she say?" "She sees things," Ellie said quietly, "before they happen. We don't fully understand it, but she's never been wrong. Daniel's daughter." Kate's expression softened. "Thomas mentioned him in his notes. Said Daniel Hartwell was the best agent Treasury ever had. Said if anyone could bring Cross down, it was him." "He died trying," Ellie whispered. "Then we finish what he started." Kate straightened in her saddle. "There's an old mining camp about 4 hours east. Abandoned now, but the buildings are solid. We can rest there, plan our next move." They traveled in tense silence as darkness fell. Lily fell asleep against her mother's shoulder, exhausted from the day's revelations. Toby drifted in and out of consciousness in the wagon bed, his breathing shallow but steady. The mining camp appeared like a ghost town in the moonlight. Kate had already started a fire in the largest building's stone fireplace by the time they got Toby settled. The old man's color was better, but his strength was fading. "We need to talk strategy," Kate said once everyone was settled. "Cheyenne is 4 days out, and Cross knows we're coming." "How can you be sure?" Ellie asked. "Because he always knows. That's what makes him dangerous." Kate spread a map across the floor, weighing down the corners with stones. "The main roads will be watched. But there's another way. Through the mountain passes. Harder, slower, but virtually invisible." Jim studied the map. "Those passes are treacherous in winter. One wrong step and we go over a cliff. Better a cliff than Cross's men. There has to be another way." "There isn't." Kate's voice was hard. "I've been running from these people for 2 years, Blackwood. I know every road, every trail, every hiding place between here and California. This is the only route that gives us a chance." "What about Lily?" Ellie protested. "She's just a child. Those passes would be hard enough for grown men. Your daughter is stronger than you think, Kate replied. I've seen what she can do, what she knows. You've known her for a few hours, long enough to recognize a gift. Kate looked at Ellie steadily. My grandmother was Cherokee. She had the sight too. I know what it looks like, what it costs. Ellie's expression shifted, some of the defensiveness fading. Your grandmother died when I was 10, but she taught me to recognize truth when I see it. Kate's voice gentled. Your daughter has a purpose, Mrs. Hartwell, a role to play in bringing these men down. You can protect her or you can prepare her. You can't do both. The words hung in the air, heavy with uncomfortable truth. They set out before dawn, following Kate through passes so narrow the wagon wheels scraped rock on both sides. The trail climbed steadily, switchbacking up the mountainside. Snow fell intermittently, covering their tracks but making the journey more treacherous. Lily's gift proved invaluable. She would suddenly cry out, stop, and moments later loose rocks would tumble from above, missing them by feet. Go left, she would whisper, and the right path would crumble away beneath their weight. By the second day, even Kate was looking at the child with something close to awe. How does she do it? She asked Jim during a brief rest. I don't know, Jim admitted. Maybe she's connected to something older. Something the rest of us have forgotten how to hear. They reached a narrow ridge by late afternoon of the third day. The path here was barely wide enough for the wagon, with a sheer drop on one side and a rock wall on the other. Jim dismounted, leading his horse on foot, every step deliberate. Easy, he murmured. Easy now. They were halfway across when everything went wrong. The ambush came from above and behind, a carefully laid trap. Cross had anticipated their route, positioned his men perfectly. Gunfire erupted from multiple positions. Jim dove for cover, returning fire. Kate was already shooting, her Winchester barking steadily, but they were pinned down, outgunned, exposed on the narrow ridge with nowhere to run. And then he appeared. Nathan Cross stepped out from behind a rock formation, average height and build, nothing remarkable about him except his eyes. Pale gray, almost colorless, empty of everything human. Marshal Blackwood, he said pleasantly. Or should I say former Marshal Blackwood? We meet at last. Jim's blood ran cold. 4 years of running and the ghost had finally found him. You went to a lot of trouble, Cross continued, moving closer with casual confidence. His men kept their weapons trained on Jim and the others. Following me all the way to this little ridge. Very dramatic. What do you want? The same thing I've always wanted. Cross gestured toward Ellie, toward the satchel she clutched. Daniel Hartwell's evidence. And perhaps something more interesting. His colorless gaze shifted to Lily, studying her like a specimen under glass. The child who sees the future. Your husband's final gift to the world, Mrs. Hartwell. The evidence can be destroyed, but a child who can see what's coming? That's invaluable. Stay away from her, Ellie snarled. Or what? Cross spread his arms. You'll shoot me? My men will kill you all before my body hits the ground, including your precious daughter. Jim's mind raced, calculating angles and odds. 5 of Cross's men visible, probably more hidden. No cover, no room to maneuver. The only advantage they had was Lily's warning that they would survive this somehow. He had to trust that vision, had to believe the child who had seen so much already. You came a long way for nothing, Cross, Jim said, buying time. We're not giving you anything. We'll see about that. Cross drew his own weapon, a nickel-plated revolver that caught the dying light. I want you to understand something, Blackwood. You cost me 3 years of my life. 3 years of hiding, rebuilding, watching from the shadows. And the whole time I knew eventually you would surface. Eventually you would find something worth living for again. He smiled, and it was the emptiest expression Jim had ever seen. And when you did, I could take it away from you, just like you tried to take everything from me. Cross aimed the revolver at Lily. Time seemed to stop. Jim's hand moved toward his own weapon, knowing he was too slow, too far away. Ellie screamed, trying to shield her daughter with her body, and Lily spoke, her voice cutting through the chaos with impossible clarity. You're going to miss, she said, because that's not how this ends. Cross hesitated, just for a second, and in that second a gunshot rang out from an unexpected direction. Not from Cross's gun, from somewhere above and behind him. Cross staggered, clutching his shoulder. Blood seeped between his fingers. His men spun, confused, looking for the shooter. Kate Morgan stood on a rock outcropping above them, her Winchester still smoking. "Now!" she shouted. Everything erupted into chaos. Jim drew and fired in one smooth motion, taking down the nearest of Cross's men. Kate shot another. Toby rose from the wagon bed despite his wound, a pistol in his good hand, and dropped a third. Cross's remaining men broke and ran. Their leader, wounded in the ambush, turned against them. Jim started after Cross, but the man vanished into the rocks like smoke, leaving only blood trail in the snow. "Let him go," Kate called down. "We need to move before he brings more men." They did not waste time. Within minutes, they were moving again, leaving the ambush site behind. Cross had escaped, but he was wounded. His men scattered. For now, they had the advantage. That night, camped in a sheltered ravine, Jim found Lily sitting by the fire while the others slept. "You knew he would miss," Jim said quietly. Lily nodded. "I saw it, just like I saw you not killing him later." Later, in my next dream, she looked up at him with those ancient eyes. "You're going to have a choice, Mr. Jim. You can kill the Shadow Man, or you can let him live. One way leads to darkness. The other leads to us." Jim knelt beside her. "Which way do I choose?" "You choose us," Lily said simply. "You always choose us." 2 days later, they reached Cheyenne. Kate led them through back streets to the federal courthouse, an imposing stone building that represented everything Jim had once believed in: justice, law, order. Inside, they found Judge Hollister, an elderly man with sharp eyes and an honest face. Kate had sent word ahead through a trusted contact. The judge was waiting. "Miss Morgan," he said gravely, "and you must be Mrs. Hartwell and Marshal Blackwood." "Former Marshal," Jim corrected. "Once a Marshal, always a Marshal." Hollister's eyes were kind but firm. "Miss Morgan tells me you have evidence against Nathan Cross and his entire operation." "Everything," Ellie said, placing Daniel's satchel on the judge's desk. "My husband died gathering this. Don't let his death be meaningless." Hollister opened the satchel, his hands trembling slightly as he examined the contents. Ledgers, photographs, Daniel's detailed journal. Minutes passed in silence while he read, his expression growing darker with each page. "This is extraordinary," he finally said. "With this evidence, we can dismantle Cross's entire network. Every corrupt official, every dirty business, every illegal operation." He looked up, tears in his eyes. "Your husband was a hero, Mrs. Hartwell." The trial began 3 weeks later. Jim testified for 2 full days, laying out everything he knew about Cross's operations, his connections to Ashford, his role in Daniel Hartwell's death, and countless others. Kate testified, presenting her brother's research and her own investigation. Toby, recovered enough to travel, added his own testimony about Daniel's work in the conspiracy that had killed him. But it was Ellie's testimony that changed everything. She stood before the packed courtroom, Daniel's evidence spread across the prosecution's table, and spoke about her husband with such fierce love and pride that there was not a dry eye in the room. "Daniel Hartwell died because he believed truth mattered," she said, her voice ringing clear. "He died because he refused to look away when powerful men did evil things, and he died believing that someday justice would prevail." She turned to face the gallery where Nathan Cross sat in chains, his shoulder still bandaged from Kate's bullet. "Today it does." The jury deliberated for less than 2 hours. Guilty on all counts. Cross was sentenced to hang. Victor Ashford and a dozen others were arrested and would face their own trials. As they led Cross from the courtroom, he caught Jim's eye one last time. "This isn't over, Blackwood," he called. "Men like me don't die. We just become legends." "Maybe," Jim replied quietly, "but legends can't hurt anyone." Cross disappeared through the doors, and Jim never saw him again. Spring came early that year. Jim stood on the porch of a small cabin in the Colorado hills, watching Lily run through wildflowers that had somehow survived the winter. Ellie worked in the garden nearby, her dark hair loose around her shoulders, her hands deep in rich soil. The consumption had not worsened. In fact, with rest and good food and freedom from fear, she seemed stronger each day. They had come to Jim's family ranch 3 weeks after the trial, the place where Margaret and Rosie were buried. The place Jim had sworn he would never return to. But Lily had asked, had seen it in one of her dreams, had insisted that this was where they needed to be. The sad place, she had called it. But it doesn't have to stay sad. It can be happy again. So they had come. And slowly, painfully, it was becoming true. Mr. Jim! Lily came running toward the porch, clutching something in her small hands. Look what I found! She held up a cluster of wildflowers, purple and yellow and white, tangled together like they had grown that way on purpose. They were by the stones where your wife and daughter sleep. She hesitated. I thought maybe they would like if we put these in the house, so they know we are taking care of things. Jim's throat tightened. He knelt down, taking the flowers gently. I think they would like that very much. Lily beamed. Mama says dinner's almost ready. She says you need to wash up or you'll get the look. The look? You know, the one where she's pretending to be mad, but she's really just worried. Jim smiled. I know that look well. I like it when she gives you that look. Lily whispered conspiratorially. It means she loves you. Does it now? Uh-huh. She straightened up, suddenly serious. Mr. Jim, can I ask you something? Anything. Are you going to marry Mama? The question hung in the air. Jim looked toward the garden where Ellie was brushing dirt from her hands, turning toward the cabin. Her eyes found his across the distance, and she smiled. That smile, the one that had slowly, carefully, rebuilt something inside him he thought was broken beyond repair. Would that be okay with you? He asked Lily. If I did? More than okay, the girl said, her old eyes sparkling. I saw it, Mr. Jim, a long time ago, even before you came. I saw us together, a family. What else did you see? Lily grinned, a brother. But don't tell Mama yet, she doesn't know. Jim laughed, the sound surprising him. How long had it been since he had laughed like that? Too long, far too long. Ellie reached the porch, wiping her hands on her apron. What's so funny? Nothing. Jim stood, offering her the wildflowers. Lily found these, thought we should put them in the house. Ellie's expression softened as she took the flowers. They're beautiful. She looked at her daughter. Where did you find them? By the graves, where Emma and Sarah sleep. Lily's voice was matter of fact. They want us to be happy, Mama. I can feel it. Ellie's eyes glistened. She pulled Lily close, pressing a kiss to her dark hair. Then we will be. She looked at Jim over her daughter's head. We'll be happy. For them and for us. That evening, after dinner, after Lily had gone to bed with stories and songs, Jim and Ellie sat together on the porch. The stars were brilliant overhead, scattered across the sky like diamonds on black velvet. Daniel's letter, Ellie said softly. He told me to love again. I remember. I wasn't sure I could. After everything, after losing him the way I did. She turned to face Jim. But then you came. Out of a storm, carrying Toby, looking like you had lost everything but didn't know how to stop fighting. I had lost everything. I know. Ellie's hand found his. So had I. Maybe that's why we fit. Maybe. Or maybe, she hesitated. Maybe the people who love us don't really leave. Maybe they just find ways to keep helping. Even from wherever they are. Jim thought about Margaret, about Rosie, about the graves in the meadow now covered with wildflowers. I think you might be right. I usually am. Ellie smiled. Ask Lily. She'll tell you. They sat in comfortable silence, hands intertwined, watching the stars wheel slowly overhead. Jim, yes, ask me, his heart stuttered. Ask you what? Ellie's eyes were bright in the starlight. You know what? Lily already told me. She gave you permission, said you had been thinking about it all day. That girl sees too much. She sees exactly enough. Ellie squeezed his hand. So ask me. Jim turned to face her fully. This woman who had held a shotgun on him the night they met, who had trusted him with her daughter, her secrets, her heart, who had walked through fire and come out stronger on the other side. Eleanor Hartwell, he said slowly. Will you marry me? Her answer was a kiss, deep and true, tasting of tears and hope, and something that felt remarkably like forever. When they finally pulled apart, Ellie was laughing and crying at the same time. Yes, she whispered, 1,000 times yes. From somewhere inside the cabin, Lily's voice drifted through an open window. Finally, I've been waiting forever for you two. Ellie buried her face in Jim's shoulder, her body shaking with laughter. Jim held her close, feeling lighter than he had in years. I love you, he said. Both of you. More than I knew I could. I love you too. Ellie lifted her head, her eyes meeting his. And Daniel loves you. For giving us this. For being brave enough to start over. We started over together. Yes. She kissed him again, soft and sweet. Together. Above them, the stars burned on. And somewhere in that vast and endless sky, Jim could have sworn he heard laughter. Margaret's laughter. Rosie's laughter. Daniel's too. The people they had lost, celebrating the people they had found. It was not an ending, Jim realized. It was a beginning, a chance to build something new from the ashes of something broken. A family forged through grief and born into grace. And as he held Ellie close, as Lily's happy chatter drifted from the window, as spring bloomed across the Colorado hills, James Blackwood finally understood. He had spent 4 years running from death. Now at last he was running toward life, and he would never stop running toward it again. The end.